Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Rutherman.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Obduction, a game that was developed and published by Cyan Worlds and was released in 2016 on Windows, Mac, PS4, and Xbox One.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
All right, so Obduction, for those who are uninitiated in this game, but initiated in old point-and-click adventure games, is a sort of a spiritual follow-up to Myst, which was Cyan's breakout big hit that most people have heard of. If you know anything about Myst, you probably know that it is, one, very fucking hard, super esoteric and difficult to get around in, and two, either that it looked really good for the time, or that there are books with live action people that talk to you in it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's exactly that. They did a Kickstarter, I think, to fund this game, and it is, just a spiritual successor to the Myst and Myst mythology extended universe series of games that the other Myst sequels were set in. But so so it follows on that tradition of the obtuse adventure game.
Yeah, the game that I find this most amusing to put side by side with is Broken Age, which was a Kickstarter game developed by Double Fine and specifically led by Tim Schafer, who made a lot of the old LucasArts games from back in the day. So we're talking about two more recent adventure games that were kickstarted and released by developers of classic adventure games. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Broken Age, the first part of Broken Age clearly is taking into consideration the issues that people had with older point and clicks, with LucasArts' older games, and trying to modernize the formula in some way. And then this game says, I am for the people who played and liked Myst, and everyone else can go eat an ass.
I do, and I stand by both decisions. I think both make sense for each studio to have done.
I kind of agree with that, yeah. And I will say, just to preempt anybody, this game is much easier than Myst is.
It's much more accessible.
By a factor of 10, this is an easier game. So I think they did actually sort of have that consideration. But yeah, there's a place in the ecosystem for both types of approaches. And but it really does, it leans heavy on what made Myst, which is something that very few games have successfully, honestly, attempted, successfully or not, to recreate. It's something that is difficult to pull off.
No, I was actually really surprised. This is one of the notes that I have, because I got to the point where I found one of the teleportation pods, and it warped me to another world, and which blew my mind. By the way, I didn't know that was gonna happen, even though I'd found some journals that talked about other worlds. I kind of thought the dome that we were in was going to be the whole game. So when I warped to another world, I was like, holy fucking shit. But the initial screen you see when you get there is kind of like a Metroid Prime-esque jungle / industrialized steampunk world. And if you took a screenshot of what you see when you load in, it's misty jungle background, some chains coming down, and a weird contraption in the distance. And I'm like, they understand what people liked about Myst, or what made Myst in a way that I am so behind. They did not lose whatever kernel of creativity or inspiration they had in the 90s, because they recaptured it 100%.
Oh yeah, this is like a thing I was going to mention later on, but can easily talk about now. Uh, is we've played, like, we do a month where we talk about horror games for the entire month every year, and have done it since we started in 2015. It has been a long time, and we've talked
Hmm.
about a lot of horror games. This time last year, we were in the midst of Spooktember in July,
Trademark.
which yeah. Do not take that. I know everyone. We really jumped on that one before the big corpos could get to it. Uh, but I have not felt like. I mean, I guess scared is not the word. The fact that I walked into that area and felt like almost like a vertigo, like a sinking feeling when I walked in, and like there are these huge imposing buildings and like machinery ticking away and like all this like giant chains and shit. Like that was such an experience for me. That was pulled off by this game in a way that games that actively try and create that often fail to do. And it is to do with this exact thing. Like they looked at what made Myst good, and they're Cyan. They're the people who should have the best idea of what that is. And it like and they took that, they said it's like quiet, it's contemplative, there isn't a lot going on, but each of these new areas you have to sort of internalize and explore on your own, and it just fucking nailed it for me. Like it's such a strong visual design, along with like just a successfully done atmosphere. Like that alone is worth playing this game, even if you cannot solve the puzzles and like actually beat it.
Yeah, yeah. Like I never ever ever remember the name of this game. But one time we booted up a game in your Steam library where you just like dropped into an alien world and you just kind of have to try and like figure out what's going on, and like there's just like weird little contraptions like you stick your fingers in, and like you remember this game?
I remember it well. It is a game that is called I'll have
Sure,
I
sure.
will find it in a bit, but yeah, it's a game that is specifically inspired by Myst.
Yeah, like
So
so in that game does capture like a lot of what's cool about Myst is like it just drops you into a really foreign, weird world, and you just have to figure it out with no kind of context or explanation. You just have to like use your intuition and like problem solving to figure everything out. But like I think like the magic of Myst is that like it adds that little bit more context. It kind of like maybe not the original as much as this game, but like this game really like eases you in and like expands it at like a nice pace, so that like every time like the like we've talked about this before, like the game establishes like a box that it works within, and then
right.
like games that are managed to like establish that box and then break it and make like a bigger box can make like a really big impact, and I think this game does that like super well.
Yeah, it has a way of sort of like setting expectations and letting you play with those expectations for like a surprisingly long time
Hmm.
before eventually saying like, okay, here's the new thing. Like
Right.
we're going to now move away into a different area.
You don't have to put forth this much effort to figure out what that game was called.
I'm close. I'm really close. Scorn. It's Scorn.
Ah, there we go, scoring. But yeah, yeah, like so, like that game was really cool, but like I feel like it didn't quite have the hook that this game does. Like I think this game like establishes itself and like gives you like a little carrot on a stick to follow, uh, which can help you get into it for sure.
Yeah. And I think like uh here's our mini episode on Scorn. I think that Scorn's biggest issue is that it's like base conceit is that it cannot explain to you what is happening due to its own world and the rules that it sets forth. So you have to figure everything out on your own through experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
And they just put you in way too big of an area to start with. So it takes forever to figure out what interacts with what in what way.
That's a really good point. The scale is too big.
Yeah, meanwhile, Obduction has one of the best openings to one of these types of games that I've ever seen. Like, much better than actual Myst, in terms of, like, actually onboarding the player. Because, one, the opening, like, cinematic, like, part where you're walking through the canyon and get taken, is incredible at setting up intrigue. I thought that was dope as hell. And then afterward, you have this like part in the town where you just sort of start walking around and essentially figuring out what the problems are before you get around to actually going for those solutions, which I think is very strong. It makes it so that you have a lot more context when you're actually turned loose to go solve puzzles and do shit to accomplish the objectives of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the original Myst, I think for its time made pretty good use of like what I call like Disneyland design, where there's like these identifiable landmarks, like the head of the big rocket ship and like the tower with like the telescope and like the building that look kind of like a Greek columns and like, you know, like these distinct areas that like you just remember immediately. Like this game has that too. Like it's got like you walk into the canyon, it's got like the house with the white picket fence. It's got like the bridge gate with like the airplane propeller. It's got the tower with the rocket ship. It's got the tree. It's got like all these like things that you immediately like latch onto. And yeah, like I think it's just a smoother experience because like I know we tried to play Real Myst almost 10 years ago now because fucking time, man, goes by so fast.
It really does.
And like we wandered around for like no lie, like an hour trying to do anything. And then we looked up a walkthrough. It's like you had to find this piece of paper on the ground. And we were like, oh. Like, this game doesn't have that sort of thing. Like, even if you missed the note in the mailbox in the, what's their name, Farley's house, like, you can still figure out where to go and what to do. Like, it's not like, as, like, you don't have to do that to trigger the next thing. So, like, it's a little bit more loose and a little bit, like, and much easier to onboard. So, yeah, like, it is a nice, more modernized version of like the same thing, basically. I think really successfully done.
Yeah, and this game's like designed as a lot more escape roomy than older games in the same style, where like you mostly find your end goal before you find clues toward it. So, and that's really helpful in a game like this. Not all the time. It's not the be-all, end-all of puzzle design, but, like, finding a keypad and knowing how many characters you have to figure out is extremely helpful, much more so than finding a wall of license plates. Because you have no idea at that stage, like, that they're going to be important at all. And only later, then you have to go back and do all this stuff. But if you're able to put that together in a more organic way, then suddenly it feels more like a Metroidvania, where you're like, now I'm happy to go back to the license plates because I know what they're for, and I know that it's a key to progress further into the game. I will say, and to piggyback, this is less so on the puzzling and more so on the visual design of the game. I do think that this game's biggest problem is that they never learned to show and not tell. This is very much like, and it's like, this is Cyan, like they make these worlds that are so like honestly incredible to look at. Like, this isn't RTX on fucking, like top of the line graphics, but they do such a good job with the design that it looks so good even 8 years after release. And yet they just put like books for you to read all over the place, and like this long text scrolls. This is like if like at a young age you picked up cooking, and like sure it was like a hobby at the time, but it grew into a genuine passion, and you went to culinary school, and then you you apprenticed under a master chef for like 3 to 4 years, and then you were like, now that I've done all that, I'm going to farm. I'm going to be a farmer, and the best damn farmer you've ever seen. And you're like, but you were so fucking good at making things that look good. Don't write a big old note that I have to spend 10 real world minutes paging through and being like, oh, okay, fucking, right. And I had a dream last night and it was about the garden. Fuck you. Show me the garden. Show me the dream. Do anything to not have me just read a bunch of text, because it just isn't interesting. And it's because it is put in contrast to everything else.
Yeah, I feel really torn about that, because like it's definitely like the style, and I do think it's like justifiable in the design and not just like a product of the 90s that Myst worked like that. Like I kind of like the idea of having to like really take your time and like use your brain and like find a note and like actually read it and comprehend it and apply it. Like I like that to like on paper like a lot. Pun intended, I guess. But like
you preempted my joke.
Yeah. Like, and like we've talked about this, I think, on the Metroid Prime episode and others. Like, it's really tough for certain types of players, because I think like having to stop and read means you have to stop playing, and like they don't mesh. So that can like I think rub a lot of people the wrong way. But like if any kind of genre is justified, I think it's this one. But yeah, so I think it's part of the style, but like, yeah, it is tough. Like it's the kind of thing that makes me want to like, when I get to a part, like when I first opened the back entrance to the house, and I got in there and there were just like 4 books on a table, with like 10 pages of text to read about backstory. I was like, like, do I push through and read all this? Or do I quit now and come back tomorrow? Like, but yeah, like it's tough, because yeah, like as you're saying, like there's like the visual design is really good, and like they're able to do things like I remember finding the telephone booth outside of the like garage area, which in the end I think is only there to like show you, so you can take a picture of it to show you like what T9 used to be, if you don't remember or know what that is, right. So that you could use it over by the tower. But like right outside of it, there are these 2 signs that are like Highway 19 and Highway 71, and I was like, 1971 is going to be a code. Like I tried to put it into the phone and it didn't do anything, and that ended up just, as far as I know, just being not a red herring, but like a thing, because like this game and games like it put your brain into that mode where you're looking at everything with a tinfoil hat, and you're like, could that be a thing? Could that be a thing? And so like I'm like, I look at that and I'm like, okay, remember 1971, take a picture of it, and then you can just completely overlook the wall of license plates, which are the actual relevant information for later. It is just like, the thing I think, like for me, at least with this game, and less so with Myst, I guess, that's really was difficult about it is finding the thread. Like the actual puzzles weren't that hard once I like figured out what I was like trying to do. Like there were like a couple of times where I was just like, oh, like there was like a tiny button right there that I didn't notice, and it took me like a fucking hour and 45 minutes to notice it.
I definitely had some I missed a little button on a wall moments. I didn't know you could go back up the track, like the I don't know, construction equipment claw.
Yeah, I didn't know
elevator.
you could go down. Like, I got to
Oh,
that.
okay.
I sent it down. I was like, oh, that's going to be like a puzzle mechanic where I had to, like, send an item up and
Right.
down and then just walked away. Like, I didn't know I could get in it. So that took me forever to, like, come back to and be like, oh, this is like an elevator.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely does have that problem. And I think that's like, there's a couple of things. One,
Yeah, I
I
talked
don't-
forever
I-
there, so.
That's like, I think there's one thing that I didn't think I was going to talk about, but might as well. The game has a mode. Like, the default mode of the game is called free roam, meaning that you walk around with WASD or a control stick like you would in any video game made after 1994. And like, that is how the game is set up. That's how the game generally functions. But there's another mode called point and click where you can just click to different hotspots on the map. And I am unsure if the game was actually designed with that mode in mind, because I feel like a lot of the things would be way more obvious if, like, the screen you were looking at was prescribed by the developer, right?
Yeah, the pre-rendered. Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have missed the button if there was, like, a specific place to go to where that button was on
like,
screen.
I felt so dumb. Like, I walked past a lot of those red hologram crystals, like, for hours before I noticed they had big blue buttons in front of them and, like, played a message for you. Like, just
Right.
didn't notice it.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. I mean, it's not that rough because, like,
No, yeah, so you can figure it out.
they don't tell you that much, and
Yeah.
you can figure stuff out. But it is like, there's a lot of stuff that's really easy to miss, and maybe it would be alleviated if I had played in point and click mode. But also, I feel like I would have been miserable. I'll tell you
Yeah.
right now, I had a lot of fun with this game for about 2 hours, and then I hated my life because it was so glacially slow, and we'll talk about that later. Because we gotta get time out of this stuff.
Yeah, like, because, like, I feel like that definitely feels like we just put it in there because that's how the original Myst was sort of thing. Like, one thing I did appreciate that I didn't realize till, like, almost till, like, when I quit playing is you can hit C, because I was playing mouse and keyboard.
Yeah.
You can hit C and it, like, locks off the camera and you can just move the cursor. So if you're looking at, like, a screen, like, I sent you a Snapchat of, like, a control board. I was like, oh god. Like so you could, like, hit C while, like, looking straight at it and it would, like, lock off the camera and you could just move the cursor around. I'm like, oh. It's like a really convenient feature. So you don't have to be, like, looking, all around to, like, hit the different buttons. So it's kind of like
I don't think I ever figured that out.
Yeah, it's like, I think I just did it by accident. Because I was trying to hit something else. And, like, or, like, maybe, like, yeah, like the space bar or something, and I just, like, hit the C button on accident. But, like, it's a nice middle ground, I think, because it can, like, lock off the shot in, like, that kind of pre-rendered background way, and you can more easily click around on.
Yeah, it would have made entering numbers into the control panels a lot
it
more.
would have helped
fucking
with the
reasonable.
rotary phone for sure.
Oh yeah, there were lots of things that, like, which is making me think more and more that it was actually designed with the point and click mode in mind. Because, like, one of the elements of this game that I really like is that nothing happens automatically. Like, every single thing that you do has to be controlled with some kind of a lever or a button or by opening a door or whatever. Like, it's a player controlled action, and it makes everything feel very chunky and interactable. And I like the overall result that puts on it. However, sometimes it's like, turn this wheel, and I'm like, I don't know how to move my mouse in a way that makes the wheel turn, where you're like, you click on it, and then you, like, move the mouse in an arc, and it does nothing, and, like, you have to move it just, like, straight left, but that's not how my brain works, so I do the arc thing, like, 5 or 6 more times. It's like, there's a lot of sort of, like, weirdness to the way that the the controls work that I think just wouldn't be there if every time I came onto a screen, I just was able to move the cursor freely around and do the stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think honestly it's panning out like maybe they designed with that in mind and then later added the free roam mode.
I disagree with that, I think. Like, I feel like it's probably a messy middle ground. Like, they probably tried to design with both in mind, and it ended up being, like, the, like, point and click locked off style works really well for some points, but mostly it's just designed for free roam, is kind of how it feels to me.
I will say I did watch. So one of the main characters in this game, not it. Well, I guess technically they are in the game as like a frozen corpse in a pod, but one of like the main points of interest is Farley's house, and the way that it's set up is like the house is there, and then there's like a broken ramp of concrete that leads down. And because in this game you can only move on the floor, there's no jumping, you can't mantle stuff. It's just very flat movement.
You can't jump off a ledge like Pokemon.
Right. Nor can you step over small rocks. But because of the way that it's structured, you have to take that ramp in order to get out. So it is the designed, intentional way of exiting this location. And I started down that ramp and apparently it was a little bit too far to the right and I got stuck and I couldn't move anymore. If the point and click interface did not exist in the game, I could not play the game anymore. Like I quit the game and restarted and I was still stuck in a hole. So I had to switch to point and click to click into a spot I could go to and then turn free roam back on.
Wild.
So yeah, the free roam is extremely weird for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I didn't experience that kind of bug, but one thing I did experience, because like I noticed while I was like booting up the game for like the second time that you had played about the same amount of time as me and you had 2 achievements and I only had 1. And I was like, oh man, like I'm so far behind, you know, like, cause like I had turned on the power, with the generator and I would bet my firstborn child that I went back and talked to CW and he was like, don't come back and talk to me till you turn the power on. And I was like, okay, like, cause like I went back to the thing, like the map that shows the power grid or whatever. And it was like, it had power to most places, but the town is not lit up. So I was like, oh, I think he wants me to restore power to the town. So there must be some kind of way to like route power to the town. So I'm like running around for like probably almost 2 hours. Exploring the whole area, trying to figure out what to do, and I like eventually just throw in the towel. I'm like, I can't fucking figure it out. And I look up a walkthrough and it's like, all right, like start up the generator and then go talk to CW and he'll give you the next objective. And I'm like, fuck off. Like, fuck off. Like, I did that. And then like I went back and talked to him and he's like, thanks for turning on the power. Here's the next thing to do. And I was like, I know. Like, I know without a doubt I went back and talked to him. So, like, if that happens to you, like, for some reason you're listening to this and you haven't played the game, if you turn on the power, go back and talk to him, and he says, don't come back here till you do what I asked, quit out of the game and reload it, because I think it can bug out where the world state doesn't update.
Yeah. There's also a thing, I have a problem with CW. I have many problems with CW. One, the Flash show was not very good.
Right. Also, CW, Cyan Worlds, not very subtle.
Yeah. Not subtle at all. But the problem that I have is that he's written like such a douchebag if you talk to him before completing objectives. And it's like, this is the kind of character that these games actually need,
Yeah.
is a guy who will give you guidance as to what you're supposed to be doing. So the fact that after, like, and even if you plug his dumb battery back in, he'll still comment on it every time. Like, oh, if you plug that battery in, and then he yells at you for not being done with the other objective.
Yeah, like that is really confusing. But from what I looked up about the endings, like whether you have the battery plugged in or not plugged in is like what determines whether you get the good or bad ending.
Correct.
So that's like really strange. Like how early in the game, like you walk up to that thing and it's like plug the battery in. I'm like, okay. You know, and
also, if you
away.
don't plug the battery in, he'll do it himself.
Right. Yeah. It's just like, that's so strange that, like, that's the thing.
Yeah, it's really weird because, like, at the beginning of the game, he tells you to plug the battery in. And then in the middle of the game, you can find the note telling you that you should unplug the battery.
Mm-hmm.
And then and so it's like maybe they wanted to give it enough time for the player to just forget they did it, so that it could be this moment of like, oh no, I forgot the one thing. And then
like,
they remind you in the middle.
But
then at the end, he can plug it in himself, reminding you about it again.
But also, like,
so I don't get the point.
The little instruction sheet too is like a big list of things, and it's like unplugged and replugged the battery to charge it, and like unplugged it and replugged it. Like it's like all this stuff about like unplugging and replugging the battery. So it's like really easy to just completely like just not understand like what the point of the battery is anymore.
Oh yeah, I have absolutely no idea what the battery actually does, because if there is a description of it, which I'm gonna go ahead and say there almost definitely is.
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah, it is just written on a sheet of paper in the middle of a journal that's 10 pages long about everyone's bowel movements, and I don't care about most of it.
At least it's not like a full library of books that you have to read all of, like the original Myst.
Yeah, Myst is not catching strays this episode. It's taking intentional shots. Myst is needlessly complicated, and I do not have the time for it.
But yeah, like, what do you think of the FNV like throwback visual thing they have going on? Because like I think it works with the holograms that I said that I missed because I didn't see the big blue buttons. But I think like with CW like in the vault, it just looks bad. Like I get what they're like. It's because it's like it's a tight spot, right? Because like you want to like reference that style of the original game. Like, yeah, you know, like you want to like kind of feel like you're doing a spiritual successor thing to it, but it's like this FMV thing, and it just, I feel like they just did like, they got like the worst of both worlds from it. Like, I feel like they made the wrong decisions. Like, it looks like it was like filmed and composited in the 90s. Like it looks like a bad green screen cutout plate. It's placed behind the glass in a way that just like doesn't convey any depth at all, and just looks like it's pasted in there. Like it looks less convincing than like the FMV in the original game to me. Like I think the one thing in the game stylistically that I think is like a total misfire.
That's very funny, because when you asked the question, I was going to say, I think it should be in every game.
Like, I have a soft spot for FMV too, which is like, I feel like they were like, they wanted to reference that, but like make it fit the new game, and I think they just failed at it.
Yeah, to your point, I think that the biggest failing of the FMV, particularly with CW, like, and not with the holograms, is that the rest of the game looks so good.
Yeah.
Like, it appearing in Myst originally was great because the way that Myst is made, they couldn't easily or convincingly have moving character models. The way that the game is just not designed for that kind of a thing. And so the FMV was a great solution because it allowed you to just project something onto a static background and get the point across. And it was mysterious and weird because Myst takes place in this like ancient civilization, ruins and shit.
Yeah, and like the compression and like the pixelization of the footage like makes it blend with the game world
A lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in Obduction, it's like the game looks really good, but then CW just feels like he's totally out of place, and it's just a human being. Like, it isn't a guy from an ancient civilization. It's just like a guy from, I think it's like fucking Nebraska or something.
Right.
And so it is like he is supposed to just be a guy, like a dude, and he is still he looks like, yeah, there's nothing to it. I will say I do love the campiness of it. That's the reason I like it is because I find it very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that kind of sells it for me. But like, yeah, if you look at like Realms of the Haunting that we did a couple years ago, that game uses FMV in the more traditional style of it just only being used for cinematics, and it works perfectly in that game because that's what it was originally designed for. Having him be there while you're able to move around really ruins the illusion.
Yeah, like, I think it could have worked. Like, I think the solution would be like, I feel like they tried to make it look low tech, and while I get why you would think that would be the way to go, I think it doesn't work. Like, I think the solution, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm not a game maker, but like, I think like you film with like a practical door and window with a real guy behind it, and then you like composite that into the world. So like the door is real, so you get like he's actually standing behind like an actual pane of glass, and there's like realistic depth, and like you don't make it look like a bad matte cutout of the actor, and it's like actually like a well composited shot. I think that would blend way better with a modern game rather than like trying to make it look like old and 90s-y.
You're probably right about that. And yeah, and I think because they did already have, I do, part of me wonders if in my big metaphor about them being like masters of showing things and then just choosing not to do it, if maybe they did just miss whatever lesson you're supposed to learn about making like human character models. Because if you look at the things that are modeled in the game, they don't look amazing. Like the things that move and are actually like designed for stuff, like the dead Mofang, who just like looks like a bad alien,
like a Halo.
The bugs, alien. Yeah, like a Halo alien, but like with less creative design. And then like the bugs are like literally just lobsters. Like they have the classic lobster tail that is unmistakable for any other creature on the planet. And they're just like lobsters with wings that fly around. There's like the weird birds and stuff, which are cool, but for the most part, like they don't look like there was a lot of effort put into like creating like these well-working functional models. And maybe they just aren't good at it. And so they decided to just keep doing the FMV thing.
Yeah, it's like, it's a hard, I think, thing like from an art direction standpoint, because like as I said like earlier on, like you load into that second world and it just like looks like Myst. Like there's this certain like computer game aesthetic to Myst, even though like it looked really realistic for the time, which I think the FMV complemented back then. Like there's still like a kind of like computer game aesthetic to it, like if you look at it now. And like I think you could have made FMV still work with it, but like it's a hard way to like know how to do it. And like I get the idea and like why they went with like the 90s throwback look, but like I think they could have like done it with more modern techniques and made it blend with the modern graphics better. is
Yeah.
how I'm going to come down on it, I think.
And it's
From
a really
my
complicated
comfortable
thing because
armchair.
yeah, and it's interesting because it is like it's an aesthetic that is unrecognizable, and it's also one that Cyan themselves helped to establish.
Mm-hmm.
Like what we consider like old computer game aesthetic is like 1/3 Myst.
Yeah.
Like that, like it's like that it was a major thing.
It like absolutely, I think, influenced the look of like the Source engine.
Yeah.
Like I think you can trace like a line from Myst to Half-Life to Portal.
There's a lot of yeah, I mean honestly, Myst looks more like Portal, with Half-Life is just sort of like the Bigfoot missing link in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just like it's complicated because when you are sort of the founder of something, and then they're sort of asking you to come back and do the new thing in your like signature style, it does make it difficult to pull off. Like it's hard to be Myst while looking like Crisis. Like it's a different situation. Like obviously this isn't a CryEngine game, but at the same time it is like obviously looks very good and upscaled a lot, and also actually modeled in a way that Myst was not. There's a lot of things that are actual interactable objects that would not have been in Myst. So yeah, it's a I'm inclined to forgive them.
Yeah, me too.
But also I think it is because the FMV is really funny to me. Like all the stuff that looked bad, I found hilarious.
Yeah. It's endearing,
and I was
for
still
sure.
impressed by the other stuff.
Yeah. It felt like it would have been, I guess, my thesis, and then we can stop talking about this. Is just that I think they could have done it with more modern like techniques and made it blend, and that would have been more like in the style of the original, because like I think that's what the original was doing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Rather
and honestly,
than
just to like
just being a throwback.
Right. I think that to round out the discussion on this sort of like presentation stuff, I do also want to just call out that I think that part of the aesthetic and part of the reason that it gives the similar vibes to Myst is with like the musical cues.
Mm-hmm.
They don't feel modern. They feel like old computer game music. And I presume, and I can look this up on the break, which I'm sure we are rapidly approaching.
Yeah.
That I presume that they just have the same composers or people who were just directly inspired by that stuff. But like when I fucking like walked into that area that we were just talking about with the big chains and the giant building, and heard like the fucking roll on the timpani, I was like, oh fuck, like it's the year 1999. It's the year 2000, and there is time for clacks. Like I'm ready to fucking go. And it does, like, it's a really nostalgic sound, and I think they did something magical to it to make it sound exactly the same now as it did then when I was a child. So I do have to hand it to them on that. This game really strode the line between like modern reimagining and just making me as nostalgic for anything as anything possibly could.
Yeah. They nailed it like 98%, I think.
Yeah.
Which is an accomplishment. I would not, if you would have told me the original creators were trying to like do a spiritual successor to Myst, I would have imagined it like completely crashing and burning and missing the mark. And they nail it.
Yeah. And to bring it back to the very beginning of the episode, like talking about Broken Age, they didn't do that.
They got like
the first
50%
half
of the
is
way
good.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when they had to release it as a second part, it did crash and burn.
It ran out of money,
and that's like
yeah.
trying to modernize it. Yeah, because they ran out of money. And with this, like that's a benefit of trying to nail like just the original style. Is you know that you're gonna be able to do it. Trying to modernize it is very hard, and they succeed where they try to for the most part. And it is just like when they're just like, we're just doing Myst right now. That they fucking ace the assignment 100%. Good shit.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about more of like the mechanical moment-to-moment experience of playing the game?
After the break?
Yes.
I think I probably blew out the recording by getting that close to the mic.
It's all good. Just de-amplify that. I'm sure it'll sound great.
Welcome back.
Good to be back.
Oh, thanks. Glad to have you back. So, as alluded to at the end of the first half, we're going to talk a little bit more about sort of how the game is laid out and the mechanical interactions and stuff, and maybe touch on a bit of the story, though. I mean, your guess is as good as mine for some of it.
As much as we can. Yeah.
It's not like exceedingly cryptic. It's just like there was a lot to take in and very little of it is relevant to the actual plot. But I said earlier that I kind of stopped having fun after the first couple of hours of the game. And specifically the thing that I want to talk about is the way that they lay out Hunrath? Yeah. The town that you start the game in. And keep in mind, the game is awesome at the beginning, because you get to just sort of walk around and like explore this cool town, and it's got all this weird shit in it that you want to learn more about and know about. And then the game gets awesome again later when you start going to other worlds, for very similar reasons. But there's this part that I am of two conflicting minds on. And that is, after you destroy this big red laser beam, the world becomes a Pac-Man maze, where when you walk out through one end of the world, you pop back in on the other. And this is it means that the world is set up in a really clever way that lets you sort of intuit where it is that you're going. You're like, I need to be up there, and so I have to be at the same height on the exact opposite side of the map. And so you can sort of devise plans to get around, which is clever level design, legitimately. It is also endless misery. Because the walk speed in this game, the run speed in this game is slow. The walk speed is basically not moving, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe this is a me thing. Maybe it's a me thing that I think that all the movement in this game is like so slow that it's borderline unplayable. Definitely it's a me thing that I discovered that you move a little bit faster while you're moving sideways, so I ran like a crab everywhere. I don't think anyone else was casually doing that. And I will own up to the fact that it's absurd that I did.
Yeah. I was looking forward to this discussion because, like, much like with the Talos principle, like, I feel like I opened up the options at the beginning of the game and was like, saw that there's like a hit caps lock to auto run. And I was like, well, I don't want to auto run because like, it's like a puzzle game and I want to like stop and look at my environment, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, the amount of time it took before I put that on, which I eventually did because I agree the walk speed is very slow, but like the amount of time it took me, I imagine would like make you like you would be in disbelief.
If it was longer than 3 minutes, I am in disbelief.
Yeah, I want to say I would probably play the game for like 4 or 5 hours before I put like the caps lock on.
That's insanity. That's why I had 2 achievements when you had 1 achievement, is because I was able to move the length of 1 football field in 4 hours, and you were still on the 10-yard line.
Yeah. No, it's because like I think I agree that the movement speed is too slow, but like I feel like while like in the first couple hours of the game, while I was like really like, because it's a Myst style game,
right?
I was trying to like, because like we didn't really talk about this, and I kind of wanted to a little bit, so we can here if we want to.
Sure.
But like, Myst has always like been like a fascinating game to me. Like a couple of my aunts on my mom's side of the family and my uncle, like played this game like Myst when it came out, and like compared notes and like took like fucking like probably 2+ years to beat it, and like like this like whole like process of like what you had to do to beat a game like this back then. And I remember like if they would like babysit us, like she would like boot up the game and just like let us fuck around in it. So like it had like this mysterious aura from that, like even more so than it already did, right? Because it was like this thing I had limited access to. So it's always fascinated me. We eventually got our own copy, like from like fucking Value City or Gabe's or some like discount store like that, like several years later. But yeah, and like obviously could never make any progress because I was too young, and you need to be like a fucking genius level intellect to beat Myst. So it's like it's always been really fascinating to me. And so like when I went into this game, I was like, I'm gonna fucking like take my time and be like super observant and like fucking figure it out and like do it for real. And so like in the beginning, I'm like looking around, like I'm like the slow movement speed of like just the walking speed didn't stand out to me because I'm like fucking stopping that often to look at stuff. So like it took me a couple of hours to be like, okay, now I need to run everywhere.
Yeah.
Long story short.
I mean, to be fair, it does also sort of like map onto my experience as well, because even though I found the game too slow to move, like it was still a good time for me until I got to the point where I had to then start using the teleports, because the teleports require you to go all fucking over the place to get to where you're supposed to go. And you can just be wrong. They're like places set up for you to be wrong in. Like, oh, I went into the wrong wall and now I'm over here. And maybe I explore a little bit that way, but it's a dead end. So I have to turn around and come back. And that's where it became maddening, which is also would have been around the time that you would have been like, let's put on the auto run, because this is a lot of moving. I will say...
Yeah, that's another... Oh, I was just going to say, that's another thing that's like a me thing, where like, anytime I like went through a warp point, I just like remembered where it went.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, like I have like a good memory for shit like that. So like I don't like, I think maybe twice I went through a wall and it took me to a place I didn't expect to go.
Well, it wasn't so much like, because you have to be able to, I mean, and this could easily just be true in your statement for the same reasons. But it's not just that you have to remember like where the warp points are going, but also where you can get from those warp points. And also the game flipped me off.
I'm also good at remembering that.
Yeah. But the game also flipped me off and stabbed me in the eyeball with a knife. Because I was like, I'm going to play with the tools available to me to see what's going on. And I turned the fucking bridge around, and you cannot turn it back for like a million years.
That's a good point. Well, you can turn it back immediately.
No, you can if you turn it to the way that it's facing the edge of the thing, like the left side of the river. You have to go to the left side of the river, which you cannot do from this universe. You have to go to a different world to get back and change it.
You were able to figure out how to turn it that way.
Yes.
Because I never did. I feel like I fucked with that bridge for like 1,000 years and couldn't get it to turn that way.
I don't know what it was basically like I turned it the correct way, right? That gave you the bridge to the side of the town that has the scrapyard in it. And I did that for a while, and then I got the warping ability, and then I had to turn the bridge back horizontally to make it across.
So you could put the ladder down.
So I did that, put the ladder down, and then I came back down and turned it the other way because I hadn't done that yet. And I was unable to, and so I couldn't take the teleporter to go across the bridge anymore. I had to go all the way around the town the other direction and go up those stairs to get up there. And basically any time that I had to go anywhere, that was just a blocked path for me now, so I had to circle around the thing. So it just made the game take longer for no good reason.
Yeah, because like when I got like I finally like got like the dome down. I took the mine cart with the laser through the warp portals and like went, and I noticed like the part where you can turn the cart around, like the big loop. I noticed you could like, go over to the side and you could blast some red rocks, some hollow rocks or whatever the fuck they're called, that are like block a mine shaft on the other side of the river. Which, and then I was so like I noticed like I did that. I was like, oh, okay, like I've got to turn the bridge, like the airplane propeller bridge, around so I can get across. And like I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do that and could never do it. So you were smarter than I, because you turned the bridge to the other side of the river.
Right. Yeah.
But maybe that was a bad thing to do.
Well, it was a bad thing to do at the time that I did it. Like, because you do have to do it, but just way later in the game, like an hour from the end of the game later in the game. In order to make it over onto that side of the river for that part. And yeah, it was just a giant pain in my ass for the whole playthrough that I had to like keep looping back through Farley's house to get to the other side of the island, or the whatever, the big dome.
The town.
So that pissed me off a lot because it added just so much time to the traversal. And I'm especially sensitive to that. Like, I was very impatient with this game. But it's funny because, like, the rest of it, I think, is very well designed, but it just requires way too much moving. That's my problem.
Yeah. For me, it's more like, I think the size of the town and, like, the number of shortcuts through it, like, make traversing it, like, pretty easy or, like, painless. But, like, the thing is that, like, it's a Myst style game. So you're going to be running around constantly. Like, you're going to run to one side of the map, try and do a thing, be like, oh, is there anything here? Answer, no. And then you have to run around all the way to the other side and, like, look at another spot of interest. So, like, that's the thing for me. It's more like the progression than it is, like, the layout of the map.
Right. Yeah, and I think that kind of... That is also... I won't say that is also my problem, because that also implies that I also don't just have a problem with the amount of running around that you have to do, even when you know what's going on.
In this game, I will not make fun of you as a legitimate complaint.
Like, probably my least favorite part of the game, I have to think hard. I think that my least favorite part of this game was when I had to just keep going in and out of the teleporter to turn the fucking orb around with the motorcycle. Like, there's a part where you have to set up a staircase that is in one world, and you take that staircase back to the first world, and there you can turn it around. It's like, let me pitch this to you as if we were playing Dungeons and Dragons. You're in a room. This room looks identical to a room that you saw before. And you can teleport between those two rooms. There's a staircase on your left leading up to a room that goes to a locked door. There's a doorway on your right at the same height. What would you like to do?
Could you explain it again?
No. What you would say is, oh, well, then I'll go back and turn the thing so that you can, so that I can go up the other side. And then I would say, okay, you do that, because it's trivially easy and there's no need to drag it out by having you run in between worlds and negotiate and adjudicate every action. But the game, because it is a video game, does not have that ability to do it. So just don't put it in the game. Do something else.
On the one hand, I 100% agree with that. The running around is in like, there's no more to say. Just the running around, it's like it gets grating and annoying. But like on the other hand, like I feel like that's the Myst experience. It's like that like mechanical, tactile nature of like realizing you need to like move between the worlds and like having to go between them to like turn the thing and like make it work. And it's hard to know where to draw the line.
Yeah.
Because, like, I feel like on paper, that's, like, so fucking cool. But, like, doing it is, like, kind of tedious. And it's, like, hard to know where it's, like, is it acceptable here? Because, like, that's the Myst style. Or is it bullshit? Like, you know, like, is it, like, that 90s, like, dated design? Like, should it be better than that now? Like, I feel like there's an appeal to it and, like, a annoyance to it. And I don't know where I fall.
That's fair. I think, to me, like, the thing for me is there are places in the game that do it really well, that do make me think about, like, oh, like, if I take the teleporter here, it's going to port. And, like, later in the game, there's a puzzle that I didn't. There's a puzzle that ended the game for me, and I could not, for the life of me, figure out what to do, and I didn't want to just go through the end of the game literally step by step with a walkthrough next to me, so I just stopped playing. But there's like a part where you walk into a room and there's 3 of the teleporters and one of them is just surrounded by part of a cave. And like, that's so cool. Like, that's really cool as both like a visual and like an interpretation of the game's conceit, where it's like you can bring a sphere of one world into another one. It's exciting. It's fun. And it made my brain work. I said, like, oh, okay, so that means if I move parts of the world into other parts, and like earlier in that section, you bring a bridge over from another world, like it's Twilight Princess. You find a bridge, you pick it up, you zap it over here. Yeah, it's fantastic. I loved it. And it's just, there are some parts where they're using the same mechanic set, but using it in a much more tedious way that really drug it down. Like, that's my least favorite part of the game. But some of my favorite parts of the game use the same mechanics. So I think that there could have just been some discretion on how it was implemented to make it less of a pain for the player to go through.
Yeah.
And I only say that because the game came out in 2016, right? Like, my complaint about Myst is not like, oh, they had a very cool mechanic that operated incredibly well within like the realm of the game's narrative. Fuck that, because I had to do a thing a lot. It's like, okay, it came out 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago. Like, I will forgive more and more things the further back in time we go.
Yeah. No, I think I agree for the most part. Like, I think, like, better implementation of shortcuts could have helped. But, like, yeah, like, once again, totally torn, though. Because, like, I feel like that's part of the appeal of this style of game is, like, Myst, like, retains, like, that, like, old 90s charm.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, it's a really hard tightrope to walk. Like, to try and, like, maintain those sensibilities and like what made Myst cool at the time and also trying to update it, like, because yeah, like, game design's completely the opposite of that now,
Right?
You know, like, most games would not do anything that Myst did. Now,
yeah, it would be seen as like taboo at this point to be like,
yeah,
in order to even begin the game, you have to find a scrap of paper. Like, that's
on the ground,
yeah.
And you probably didn't even know you could look down.
Exactly. Like, that's why we fucked up, is because we have been subsisting on a diet of games that open with a tutorial for the last, like, 15 years. Subconsciously, we aren't thinking, is the tutorial on this sheet of paper on the ground? We're like, that's trash.
We didn't even see it.
Yeah, oh my.
We didn't, like, we literally didn't even look at it, like, at all. We never saw it.
It was never rendered on the screen.
And we played for like over an hour. Running around, pulling levers.
In case anybody was wondering who saw that we were doing Obduction, why we haven't talked about Myst, this is why.
Yeah. Like, we would have totally wanted to. But, like, we were so unable to play it at all that we were like, we can't talk about it because we just used a walkthrough to beat the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just for the experience.
To talk about puzzles, I think, a little bit, which I think is related enough. The game is, I would argue that the puzzles in Obduction, taken as literal as you can, are not nearly as bad on the average as other Myst games, Myst, Riven. That's where my experience ends.
Yeah, no, I thought they were pretty accessible for the most part. Like, I think I said on the first half, the parts for me, as far as I got into it, which probably only like a third of the way, or
I think it was a little over half.
Yeah, okay, maybe half of the way then. Like the hard part was like just finding where to go next. Like once I like found the thing, like the puzzle wasn't that bad usually. And like it's rare for like a puzzle game to give me that moment of like accomplishment. Like where I'm like, God damn it, I'm a goddamn master of video games. Like when I like figure out the correct license plate to punch into the thing to get into the tower, I'm like, yeah, I'm a fucking genius. Like I figured it out. I understand her wrath.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that it's crazy because the game contains essentially two kinds of puzzles for me, which was puzzles that I was able to figure out through some amount of, expected mental legwork, literal walking around for hours legwork, or luck, like finding something that just sort of worked, and figuring it out.
Yeah, as an example, like there's a clue, but like I just fucking like approached the house, the Farley house, and just took a picture of it because I was like, there's a house number. It was like, as I said like earlier, I was in Myst mode, and I'm like, any fucking combination of numbers needs to be noted. And then when I went around to the back of the, like once I restored the power and the light came on like the back tunnel to the house, I'm like, okay, I'll punch in the house number.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, okay, that didn't work. Maybe I put it in backwards, and it just worked.
Nice.
And like I had not found the clue, and like that just worked, and I was like, I'm a fucking genius. Like it felt so good. I was like so surprised, and I was just like this genuine like, fuck yeah moment.
It is great. Like, I did that thing in the Medium, a game that I still don't really recommend for other people to play, but I did. There was like
It's all right.
It's fine. There's a door that I just like put in a number that I had remembered reading about, and
it was like
worked.
a year, like a date.
It was a date, yeah, and it just worked. And I skipped like an hour of stuff in the game because I just knew it was probably like 15 minutes of stuff, but
yeah,
like I just like randomly remembered this important date and walked through a door that I wasn't supposed to yet. Like that didn't feel. I mean, it was funny, but it didn't feel like that. Felt more like luck. Like you put together in your head like that it was the same door, or like because I didn't even know
it's like
at the time.
It's the back door of the house, so I put in the number backwards.
Exactly.
Was like the idea in my head, and I was like, "There's no way it'll work,"
and it just does.
Because like I figured like you needed like a specific puzzle, like to figure it out, but then it just worked, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" like it was like an example of like just like real world like observation and like a base, like it is like a logic because it's like the back door of the front door, so it's the backwards number,
right?
But it is kind of a leap, but like it just worked.
Also spatially, you were able to recognize that it was the back of that house, whereas when I got to it, I was just like, look at this door in a canyon. Anyway, totally unrelated to everything else.
There's a gap in the like if you go there after the power's turned on, the lights come on inside the cave. So you can like see through the boards, you can see the back door of the house. So it's like more obvious.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever would have figured it out.
Fair enough. But
I was very surprised when I realized where I was, which was not immediately, I'll tell you.
But yeah, no, like I was just it happened for me so early in the game that like I really felt like rewarded for paying attention.
Right.
And I think like that's really cool that like that's like I imagine like a sizable percentage of people figured that out like I did, like just by kind of like basic observation and a little bit of a leap of faith.
Uh-huh.
And like I like that that's like rewarded that early because it like incentivizes you to keep doing that.
Right. And I think that does lend itself really well to a lot of the puzzles in this game. However,
Right.
there is a fucking step aside the witness, learn a number system entirely separate from our own, and how to input it on a board of GUI pegs. Good Christ. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, even looking at it now, like, cheating through every one of them that I found, I have no idea how... Like, that to me is so above and beyond what you enter into a video game expecting to be asked to do. And I just... it felt so out of place. Not that it's necessarily bad. I do think it is bad. My personal opinion is that it was bad. But it's not inherently bad that they make you learn this weird thing. But it feels really out of pocket for it to ask you to do this, especially as early in the game as it is.
So from what I know, and I'm a filthy casual babe, it's like reminiscent of a mechanic from Riven,
Okay.
which I've never played. And like apparently, like, from what I'm aware of Riven, basically, Riven is essentially just one big puzzle. Like you just have to kind of figure out like the central puzzle of like the area or the island. I don't know if it's an island or whatever. And so like it takes a really long time to like make progress, and like you have to like kind of like really understand what's happening, sort of thing. So like from what I understand, like I feel like that mechanic is in there for the Riven heads in the audience. Like I think it's like the legacy like Myst Riven like boys and girls in the audience. So it feels kind of like not like a legacy mechanic, but like that sort of thing has a precedent in the series. So
Which
yeah, it also completely threw me. Like I found like there was like the piece of paper in the garage by like the first one that I found.
Oh yeah.
That explained like, oh, it's like a factor of 4. Like he tried to like explain it in a way that like I'm sure if you're a mathematician it might make some sense.
Yeah, it's a base 4. What I know of it is that it's a base 4 number system, meaning that like 10 is 4 is 10 essentially. Like so you would go 1 2 3 1 0.
And then like
yeah,
and like from what I noticed, like from like my messing around with it, it was like 1 was like 2 of them, and then 2 was 3 of them, and then 4 was 5 of them. You know, like so it was like one off. And then like, but it has like an autocorrect button. Like I actually did figure this out myself. Like in the Farley house, there's like the glyph
right,
written on like the
projector.
Projector? Yeah, like the projector screen. And you can like, and I did I went over like I recognized because like one of the slides on the projector was like the same kind of dot set up, and I was like projected it over it. I was like, okay, I make like this 15 shape. And then like there's like an autocorrect button on the robot, which like it took me a while to notice that was a thing. But yeah, like so I didn't like get super far into the game, so like I don't know exactly to the extent you're supposed to understand that mechanic. But I certainly hadn't risen to that occasion yet.
Yeah, the part that I quit on, there's like a series of I didn't have to use it very often, which makes it extremely not worth learning if you're just going through the game casually. Like it really comes down to personal preference on this. Like if you think that learning this number system, and it's not necessarily the number system that is fucked up, it's the fact that it correlates to a pictograph symbol system that you have to learn in order to know how to represent the numbers.
Yeah, it is. Like, just to interrupt you real quick, I'm gonna let you finish with Beyonce, one of the greatest albums of all time. Like, for me, it's like, it's because it's open-ended, right? Like, you come in contact with that, and you can ignore it. There's not something that stops you and, like, makes you learn it. And, like, I feel like, yeah, like, you really have to do the legwork yourself, which is, like, one of the things that separates the Myst boys from the Myst men. I feel like people who really like Myst, like, that switches them on. Like, that makes them come alive. Like, they want to figure that shit out. And then there's me, a Myst boy, who, like, is super intrigued by Myst and thinks it's awesome and cool, but that crops up and I'm like, oh no.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I don't know what to even do here. And it's just, and it's the fact that it's multi-layered to me, because, like, there is the way that you're, I guess, supposed to learn it, and this is classic Myst, to be fair, is the one in the garage is next to a register, and
you can punch in the number,
and it'll show you, like, what the number's symbol is, and then you write all of those down, and then anytime. But also there's, like, so as far as you have to use it, there's, like, one part where you get a symbol and you have to turn that into numbers to put into a key code.
Right.
Which, okay.
But it's an incorrect symbol, and you have to use the autocorrect
to actually get the thing
number
that you're supposed to have. So you do that. That is one time. And then later, you have to build bridges by putting the numbers into a thing, one of those robot things, and pressing the button, and it will, like, spit out a bridge. Like 3D prints the bridge if you put in the right number. And you just do that over and over again. So you have to know that one symbol to put in, and then make as many bridges as you want using that, essentially. And so it barely feels worth it. Like, if you go through the effort, I feel like you would not feel rewarded for doing so. You would just go like, wow, I got 2 things out of the whole game that I had to use it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, because for me, like, the amount of effort it takes to really internalize the rules and be able to figure out, like, the correct number combination to build the bridges, like, I think that's, like, really satisfying if you figure it out on your own.
See,
like, I think I agree that, like, it's the amount of effort it takes for the amount of payoff is, like, skewed. But, like, I don't know. Like, I think, like, that is Myst, though. like it's like dropping you into this, like, really, like, obtuse world, and, like, you just kind of have to figure it out. Like, I'm not, like, I'm speaking as, like, as I've tried to express, like, somebody who really admires Myst but is not a Myst person, so maybe I'm cutting it too much slack. But, like, I feel like that's the appeal.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, like, any video game that you try really hard at means nothing, and you'll never get anywhere using those skills in your life. But at, like, just at the surface level for me, it's like I lose my enjoyment, I think, of it when it asks me to essentially stop playing the game at hand and do homework on my own.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I realize that other people just aren't like that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it just feels like they've modernized so much else about this game. Why is this still required?
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to frame it, I think. Because, like, I agree with you. I agree with that 100%. Like, it's like you get to that point where you encounter that robot in the number system. You're like, okay, now it's time to stop playing the game and, like, figure this out. And that might take, like, fucking 3 hours. Like, you have to, like, stop playing the game and then just, like, switch to a different thing.
Right.
And I also find that unappealing.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at...
But, like, I think, like, but when you switch over, if, like, you're the kind of person that can figure it out, like, once you have the knowledge, I feel like it then, like, switches back. If I could bridge that gap, I feel like then it would switch back over to being fun and interesting again.
Right. And it feels like the way to bridge that gap is to have played Riven and done this same Sisyphean task just 15 years ago. Which, by the way, I only discovered this when I went to install this game, that a Riven remake came out like a week ago.
A week?
It's like
but
really
I thought they
recent.
Oh, okay. I thought that happened like fucking 10 years ago. Or
And I think they made like a real Riven style remake, but they just Cyan made a
just did a full
remake on the 25th of June. So yeah. Really recently. This was not intended. In fact, Happy Independence Day. Also, this is the last game
Happy
of
Riven Day.
Happy Riven Day. This is also the last episode of Mystery May.
Mystery Summer School.
Yeah. So this was very much not planned as being like celebrate Riven.
A game I've never played before.
Exactly. We just didn't know it was coming out, and coincidentally it did right now. But all that being said, I just think I don't like it.
No, it's once again, I guess I'm just gonna keep saying this over and over again, but I feel like I'm not in the place to pass judgment on it. I guess because I also don't gel with it, but I don't know if I understand it well enough to say if I think it's good or bad.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I think obviously it's there for some people and not for others. It's just man, is it a lot of work
for sure.
One thing that I'll say that requires no response from you. I found the sound effects of riding in the cart to be extremely calming, therapeutic almost. It gave me memories of riding a one of those touristy trains that just goes around a park.
Sure. It almost has a white noise machine kind of sound.
Yeah, I could easily fall asleep to the cart sound from Obduction.
Yeah, the only other note I had, which I don't think will lead to any meaningful discussion, but I think when you first put you enter into the world, and if you're anything like me, the first thing you notice is the big purple mountains.
Yeah,
in the background. I think everyone will. But you can only explore the town proper, the western, Arizona, whatever town. And then once you bring down the dome, and the barrier is gone, and you actually try to go to the Purple Mountains, it just warps you to another place in the town. I thought that was a really interesting, mechanic reveal. Because it's just not at all what you expected. You think you're gonna go to a different location and it warps you to another it just felt very Myst. Everything else. But it's just this subversion of what you expect to happen, and now it's this new and then once you warp to a place, you're where's all the other Purple Mountain locations, where are they gonna go? You immediately start thinking of it on that Myst level where where can I now get to that I couldn't before, and you want to map it all out. So I thought that was a cool moment.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know how much more I have to say about it.
That's fair. I had equal parts excited and disappointed when I first did it, because I was kind of excited to see what the rest of the alien world was like. And
you can't get there till the end of the game.
Yeah, and you'd just realize that you're just sort of stuck in this one area the whole time. But then the other part was, I went through the thing. Now I can use this as sort of a puzzle solution, which was very cool. I did note very early on that the Purple Mountains cross section where the dome cuts through was a really cool visual effect that I liked a lot before I knew anything was going to happen with it. So.
Yeah. And then there's also kind of a double subversion, because you can warp to a new place that lets you get to one of those machines that takes you to the other world. So this does let me go to another alien world indirectly.
Yeah.
I think that makes that twist hit even harder. Because I don't know, like the pacing of that I think is really interesting.
Yeah. And the fact that like all of the other alien worlds also work the same way. There's a red laser you destroy and then you can do the teleporting in them is very fucking good cuz it cuz it well just cuz
There's a
like
logic to it.
yeah, there's a logic to it. It helps that like the game rather than being like three totally different games is this it has the same sort of mechanic set so your brain doesn't have to go through, especially when they make you go in between the worlds, you don't have to like be jumping in between entirely different mechanic sets. Plus obviously it works well because the whole like seed world being teleported in big spheres thing just works that way. Like that's just how the game is set up, and I do like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have Mofang thoughts?
God, my Mofang thoughts. Yeah, so I think, like I said earlier, Myst is a game that I have a lot of respect for, and like still has a lot of Myst. Such an appropriate title because it really does feel like mysterious and mystical, um, and like yeah, and like being a kid in the '90s, I think that hit really hard. Even though like I wasn't able to like really play it at all, it still made an impact. So I think says a lot about that. Like that game just hit at exactly the right place at exactly the right time, and really like surprised people. Um, so yeah, jumping into this, like I definitely had that drive to like wanna try and get that Myst experience out of it, and like I think it is a lot more accessible. It did like I was able to make progress. Like I actually got through like actually undoing everything that CW did to the town like on my own. Like getting like the tree watered and getting to the tree and getting down into the underneath of it. So like that felt very satisfying. Like I felt very accomplished for doing that. But then that's really when it goes full Myst, in my opinion. When you open up the other worlds and you're able to like warp around, and it just feels like the possibility space gets huge, and like there's the whole number thing that I really wasn't prepared for, but I guess the Riven heads are gonna be all about probably. So yeah, like I feel like yeah, a lot more accessible, and uh yeah, like there's just something about that formula, like of like being dropped into a world and like all the like little, like I said, like the Disneyland style landmarks to kind of draw you around the map, and like all the little things that like you're curious about and you want to know about, and you're like you want to peel it back, and you don't mind the running around, and you don't like for hours. Like I think it's really like a an accomplishment to like make this style of gameplay as palatable as it is, because really does feel so niche. So yeah, I think this game is like a big success, even though like I'm not like a big Myst person, much to my dismay. So yeah, like I really enjoyed my time with it. Yeah, there were snags. Yeah, there were some things I had to look up. But like I feel like if we weren't doing it for the podcast, if I was just doing this in my free time, like I think I could probably get through this on my own. Maybe I'm wrong. But like I think I could get mostly through it, like like 95% of the way there on my own, which is a lot better than I would have expected. So like yeah, like I had a good time. Like I wish I could have had like a little bit more time with it, but like it is, I think I just have to like accept the facts, and like that it's just the forcing it a little too much. I'm just not a Myst person. So yeah, I got as much as I could out of it, and I enjoyed my time. But I guess it's just not meant to be, I guess.
Yeah, and also for the record, I think also in my opinion, the game really gets it kicks it into Myst mode like partway through the second act. Like you get a good portion of this game that is definitely more accessible, going a lot against what I said about this being like very much made in the style of the original Myst. They did make an effort to make it more reasonable for regular people to play without sinking their whole lives into it. But what I think I've learned is that that is what the developer ultimately wants to make, is a game that is something that you come back to. This is a jigsaw puzzle more than it is a traditional puzzle game. Like, there are a lot of things that benefit in this game from you just pausing and walking away and just having it in your head and thinking like, what could the solution be? Which saves a lot of time on the slow moving around, because if you have ideas, you know where you're going. It makes the travel time feel a lot less meaningless. And I think that would help a lot. You are right to call out the fact that the podcast kind of makes it impossible to do games like this unless they're ones that we played in our spare time and then just both finished, and then we could talk about them. Which isn't something that we often do, and especially not when the the game was decided by die roll. So yeah, this game is actually very good. I think that the opening of this game and the first area are both extremely successful at what they're trying to do, and also approachable in a way that Cyan's other games often are not. And so I will give it that. I didn't want to play this game after the first few hours of it. I said, like, we're getting into the point where I am spending more time doing nothing than I am doing something. And that is a quick way to get me to check out. Which is problematic for a game where, like, it requires the utmost of attention to detail. So that I think that's definitely more my shortcoming than it is the game's. So I have to leave it, like, it hit me with a lot of moments that I thought were really, really good. Like I described, I think the first world that you go to that isn't Earth or a chunk of Earth teleported to an alien planet is like the highlight for me.
Captor.
Oh, I'm sorry, come again?
Was it Captor? I wrote them down.
Captor sounds right. Yeah, it's like Captor, and then
is Earth? I have written down Earth, Soria, Captor, Mare,
okay.
and
Mofang,
Raspera.
Oh, do not know that one. Yeah, Mare was the one that killed me. I could not proceed past. There's an area of the game that the game itself refers to as the Gauntlet, which, if learning an alien mathematical system is the filter class, this is like the 400 level, like, figure this one out, jackass, like, where it's a culmination of a bunch of the game's mechanics. And I just wasn't able to solve it at all, and didn't want to go step by step to do it just to get past it. So I stopped playing there. But yeah, everything I said before is more or less my final thoughts on this. I think this is a game that if you were a Myst fan, if you were just a puzzle game fan generally, I think that this game probably works for you. And it just does not work for me, because I am neither of those things. Very impressed by a lot of the stuff in it, but not super in love with the game itself.
Yeah. I don't know if there's ever been like a style of game I've wanted to like more than this style and just not been able to.
Yeah.
Personally.
Oh, now I'm thinking about it. I'll get back to you on that next time. Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, unless you decide this is a bad idea, because we didn't actually discuss which of these we're doing first, I am presuming we're doing Elden Ring Shadows of the Erd Tree.
Yep. We did discuss that, and that is what we're doing.
Hell yeah. So Elden Ring Shadows of the Erd Tree, as everyone who's listening to this podcast, well, I don't know, maybe if you're just like a Myst guy who stumbled into this, you may not be aware, is the DLC for Elden Ring that came out this last month. And we have already finished it, and we'll have a good old time having a conversation. This is when we are truly in our element. So excited for that. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our email address, our Twitter account, the YouTube channel, the Discord where we talk about the games. You can find all of our old episodes, including ones that we did on, this whole last month. Fucking pick one. All of them are good.
Infinifactory.
Yeah, we did Infinifactory. We did fucking
Quadrilateral Cowboy.
yeah.
Baba Is You.
We did Baba Is You, which is probably actually one of the more close. I don't know. Maybe not. Myst type games are definitely kind of their own thing.
They are for sure.
You could go get the Riven remake.
One thing I was thinking about, Outer Wild.
Oh, yeah.
Feels Myst inspired for sure.
One of the things that I really liked about this game was the fact that like you don't have an inventory, so everything that you figure out and can carry into other areas is all knowledge based. That's very Outer Wilds.
That was one thing I was gonna bring up is when you first get teleported to the new world, to Herath, you're in a cave and there's a lantern sitting there. And it's just a tutorialized like picking up things and looking at them. But like I was like, am I supposed to be able to take this with me? Like, it really felt like I was supposed to take it with me. And like I came back to it like 3 or 4 times, like thinking I just like hadn't, like I had just missed something.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely lots of things that felt like you should be able to pick them up, but you just can't. Your character does not have pockets. Can't take stuff.
But yeah, I was like, is there some kind of, I opened like the controls menu. I was like, is there an interact button? I'm not like, but anyway.
Interact with other people in the comments section.
Drive a minecart around a loop-de-loop and then blast some rocks to get to that subscribe button.
We really should not have put the subscribe button behind some like difficult to figure out rock puzzles.
Yeah, that's just what CW wants.
That's
We had to lock down the YouTube channel.
We'd have a lot more subscribers if they didn't have to learn a alien language to subscribe. And that's
the Cyan world's way.
Nice.